Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the Gamer Breakfast Show. We still haven't come up with an official name for the podcast yet, but I did change it to show from podcast. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it was my first idea, so I'm not married to it, but I
yeah, you
changed
gotta commit, man.
it. Yeah, maybe
Go full hog.
I like show because it's generic enough, and you can talk about anything on the show.
That is true.
So just going with that.
You're very tied into topics when it comes to a podcast.
Yeah,
It's like, well, I would like to talk about this, but it's a podcast, so therefore
yeah,
I should
I
probably
can't.
only talk about that on some show.
Yeah, I, I think we'll go with show for a while unless someone has a better idea. Maybe we'll do a contest or something for who can name the podcast about the podcast. So,
All right.
but anyways, yeah, I tried to update the graphics a little bit this week. There's a email we have now, gamerbreakfastlive@gmail.com. So if you got any questions or topics that you'd want to hear about, just write us and we'll probably talk about it because we need ideas and yeah, we'd love to interact with you people. So
If you have any general ideas on how we should live our lives too, that might be good. General life tips, goals,
yeah, well,
recipes.
basically,
Recipes are
yeah,
always
anything
good.
you send us, we'll read. So within reason,
I
of
can't
course.
promise that.
Yeah, and I'll promise that for now. Until like someone abuses that, we'll go with that. So this week, I thought we'd kind of switch gears. Well, it's not really a total switch because we're still in the comic realm. But last week I wanted to talk about two topics, but we went 90 minutes on X-Men, so I thought that was probably enough for episode 1.
Well, I got more to say about X-Men.
Yeah. Well, I, I, I thought we'd switch gears from Marvel to DC this week,
All
and
right.
we're going to talk about the comic event that came out last week was called DC Rebirth, and the wording kind of DC put out with this was kind of peculiar because they didn't want to call it a reboot or a relaunch. It was more of just a new status quo. I heard him say a lot that they wanted to kind of set up the status quo going forward for all their superhero books. Um, I guess to kind of make sense of this, we kind of got to step back for a second. And I wasn't really into comics too much when this happened a few years ago now. I think it's 4 or 5 years. But DC recently did do a reboot of all their superheroes with the New 52 line.
Yeah.
And were you Jordan? Were you reading DC stuff at that time?
I always read some stuff. Ever since I was into comics pretty much my entire youth, and then went away from some time in high school for a little bit, and then came back to them in college. But I mean, my reading habits before the New 52, after the New 52, it's always kind of the same. There's one or two things I like, and then the vast majority of it I don't like. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I read a few titles before the New 52, a few titles afterwards.
Hmm. Kind of like their goal with the New 52. From what I've read, again, I wasn't reading comics at the time. Was it was kind of a jumping on point for a lot of people, and I do remember people that weren't into comics at the time. This is when they do these large stories, and Rebirth included. They actually get media coverage, um, like outside of just comic circles. Like you will see the story pop up just in larger news outlets, and uh, it's kind of a jumping on point for a lot of people, or a jumping off point. So
Yeah.
it's the New 52. I think was fairly well received. Is that fair to say?
I would disagree.
Oh, really?
Yeah, um, I think the vast majority of stuff wasn't that well received. I think there was certain titles that were.
Hmm.
I think Grant Morrison's Superman. was kind of in the middle, and then the Batman titles have been consistently well reviewed and liked, I think. But there's a lot of kind of weird peripheral comics that came out at that time. Uh, some of which I think were well liked that I didn't read a whole lot about.
Hmm.
But then there was a lot of like really '90s type stuff because it's very interesting when you talk about the New 52 in general. And this is gonna bore everyone, but like a few years ago, like Disney bought Marvel, right?
Right.
And that was like huge news. And Warner Brothers, Time Warner's always owned DC for like years and years and years. But Warner Brothers is made up of like incompetent people, like in general. Like when we were in high school, we used to watch a lot of wrestling,
Right.
and they owned like WCW,
Yep.
which was like losing them like millions and millions of dollars until they like realized it,
Hmm.
and then they like shut it down. That's like kind of the same thing with the comics division. Like it just kind of existed, and they were left to do their own thing. And then like the news broke that like Disney bought Marvel, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we own a comic company too. We should probably like do some stuff with it."
Yeah, we should
So that's like
monetize it.
right around the time the New 52 started,
Hmm.
and they hired all these guys from like Marvel in the 1990s to like run their company, which is interesting because Marvel in the 1990s wasn't a very well-run company. But
So these are guys
they
like Jim Lee and
Jim Lee,
or was
Jim
he
Lee's
there
a very
before that?
yeah, Jim Lee's like a very popular artist, and I think they promoted Jim Lee to like I forget what his actual title is. It's like co-publisher or something like that. But that's similar to what Marvel did with Joe Quesada, was a famous artist that they promoted to like their head position.
Hmm.
But it's like guys like Bob Harris, who used to be the editor in chief at Marvel. He was like the editor in chief at DC. They had a lot of old '90s artists. They brought Rob Liefeld back and Brett Booth and a lot of people that drew like anatomically interesting characters, and that their anatomy wasn't right up to snuff. But so I think it's a bit of everything. I think there was a lot that wasn't well reviewed. I think
Hmm.
Wonder Woman was pretty well reviewed, but a little of both.
So yeah, so maybe the Wonder Woman, the Batman, and the Superman were okay, right? Or good, and then we had 50 or 49 other comics maybe. That's kind of exaggeration because there's some
Now, I think it
crossovers
started
and
off with
stuff.
52.
But yeah, they did start with 52 different books, so which is actually pretty impressive logistically, just to do that when you think about it. But so it's 5 years later, and most of these stories that did stick around are up around issue 50 now, or 4 years later. I quite remember the date, but um, they've done this DC Rebirth announcement, which it was um, kind of rubbed some people the wrong way because you saw like kind of this is probably a larger question, but like it seemed like soon to be doing, even if it was a new status quo, it was close enough to a relaunch for a lot of people. And um, I guess when we were kids and we were doing comics, like there wasn't large status quo changing events happening regularly, I guess. Um,
No, they kind of do what they kind of did what Marvel does now, which is they'd have these big crossovers and stuff that don't really lead to anything like any drastic changes, just kind of the illusion of change.
hmm.
Uh, yeah, I mean the biggest one was Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was like in 1986, I think, 85, 86. So it was like before like I probably knew how to read. Um, but that was like when DC just restarted everything,
Hmm.
and then they've kind of had like minor reboots and stuff up till the New 52, and that's kind of was their next like we're restarting everything except for Batman because Batman's too popular, so Batman will. Still be the
Yeah, sure.
same as he was before. So, but
So,
yeah, I mean,
go
oh, you go ahead. You're the ringmaster.
ahead. No, I was gonna say so yeah, I've been reading. So I started reading comics about a year and a half ago, I guess. And I'm pretty much a poser, and I'll admit it. But it was they were doing the Star Wars. Marvel was doing the Star Wars story, and it was all over the news. And I said, hey, Force Awakens is coming out in a year. I thought it'd be kind of a fun way just to get hyped for Force Awakens if I started reading Star Wars in January and kind of leading up to December for Force Awakens. Just kind of give me something to do, Star Wars related, and that was kind of my main goal. And um, I really have liked the Star Wars books. The Darth Vader book especially has been very good, I think. But I've when I went to our local comic book shop, yeah, eventually, like if you're around it enough, then I did randomly pick up this and that until I was maybe reading a few books a month, but I kind of stayed away from the DC stuff. Because I'd known about this new 52, and it was kind of this thing of like I didn't want to jump into the middle of a story. Whereas like a lot at the time, a lot of the Marvel books were doing their I can't remember what their event was called, but it was similar. It was called Marvel Now or something, where they basically it seems like they had just it really wasn't a status quo changing thing, but they had like renumbered their books and like promised kind of a fresh start to a story or whatever. So it was easy for me to like jump in on some of that stuff. So then this DC Rebirth came along, and I thought, oh, maybe this will be something similar where maybe I could get into like one of these DC books a little bit. And so I did pick up DC Rebirth, and I read it, and I was pretty much thoroughly confused because I had no history with the New 52.
Yeah. Which is always good if you're trying to get new people in, is
Yeah,
to thoroughly confuse them out of the gate.
and that might not be fair because I don't think they promoted it like as much as like jumping on point for people. They promoted it more of a as a return to some of their legacy characters and whatnot. And so like maybe my expectations were kind of incorrect going into it, but I did pick.
I'd say your expectations were the right kind of expectations.
I mean, it was
The
named
fact that the
Rebirth, right?
comic didn't reach your expectations, I think, is a fault of the comic, not so much a fault on yours.
Yeah,
Um,
and it was named Rebirth, right? So I mean, my expectations weren't like totally crazy, I guess.
no, no. Well, I just talked about like a Crisis on Infinite Earths, right?
Hmm.
So like before the New 52 or whatever, they had this event. It was called Infinite Crisis,
Hmm.
and this came out when I was in probably law school, and so I was fairly old at the time, and I'd read. You read through this comic, and the big twist ending in that comic is it's a sequel to the original Crisis on the Infinite Earths with all these characters that hadn't been seen since there.
Hmm.
And I'm like, dude, I was 4 when this came out. Like, I don't even know who these people are. And I've read comics my entire life.
Right.
So it's kind of that same thing, It's like who is the target audience for this? It's
Sure.
older people.
So maybe we'll just get into the story a little bit, and then we can talk about how we liked it or didn't like it. I'm gonna do something like I don't know if this is legal or not, but like I have the book digitally, so I'm gonna bring it up and I'm not gonna like read the comic to everyone, but we'll
Oh,
like
read it word for word.
we'll just go with
We're
it
gonna
and
do
see
the
what
voices.
but yeah, so I'm gonna bring it up now. And hopefully this will work. I think it should. And so we start off and we have this kind of unnamed narrator, and he's basically going on about how he's been ripped out of reality. And we see some lightning and whatnot right off the bat. So I think your Crisis on Infinite Earth, that's also a Flash story, right? Or in kind of the end. That's kind of like the death of Barry Allen, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, that's where Barry Allen died. And then Flashpoint, which is what brought the New 52 in, is a Flash story. two,
Yeah.
and then this is a Flash story. So
Yeah. So it seems like Flash is kind of their scapegoat for these for these large events. So I guess he's a good character to like build an event around
yeah,
if you
oh
want to
yeah,
reboot stuff.
or if you just want to reference the previous reboots. I wonder how much of it is that, as opposed to like,
Yeah.
oh, this is a great character for doing it.
But yeah, we have this unnamed narrator who we'll name here shortly, and he's basically trying to get back into reality that he's been ripped from. My page isn't loading now. This is probably making for great radio too.
Yeah. Hey, I was we were talking about this. I was listening to the radio
Hmm.
right a few weeks ago, and it was on a Wednesday. It was on a new comic book day,
Yeah.
and there's this dude, and he was it must be like college radio or like maybe even high school radio. I don't know. But this dude went and he bought a bunch of comics.
Yeah.
It's like, I think it's unfair that I get to read these comics and you don't get to read these comics. And he proceeded to start reading the comic books over the air. Which maybe there are people here that are unfamiliar with the medium of comic books, but it is a visual medium.
Was he describing the panels or just reading the dialogue?
Uh, Mostly reading the dialogue, but kind of describing the panels. And it
Yeah.
was so awkward that it made me feel uncomfortable for the guy, even though I was just listening to the radio in my car. Like it wasn't like he was doing it like directly to me, which would be even weirder. But still, it's just like, man, why are you doing this?
He was
Like
going for it.
who? Yeah,
It
why do
wasn't
you think
fair,
this?
man. That was his
But I did
reasoning.
catch up on the newest adventures of Silk. That was one of them. Silk and Spider Man,
Oh
and
yeah.
then the second one
Hmm.
was Injustice: Gods Among Us.
Oh okay.
He
From
was
from
not a
the
big
video game.
fan of Injustice: Gods Among Us. So steer clear of that, gamer breakfast show.
I won't. Okay,
Wow.
I promise not to read the comic then. But eventually, we basically the unnamed narrator is revealed to be Wally West, um, in his Kid Flash outfit, I guess. And I didn't know that Wally West was not in the New 52 because I had like so once again this kind of like I didn't know like he was the one ripped from reality.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't familiar, so for me it didn't have that large of impact. But were you like surprised by this revelation, or
I
any
won't say I'm
emotional impact
surprised.
there?
Emotional impact. I would say not really.
Yeah.
To tell you the truth, I'm not caught up in like the Flash. The Flash has never been like. There's been some good Flash stories that I've liked, but I don't I don't keep up on the Flash. So
Hmm.
no, I mean I didn't. And did you get this from reading this? Because I found this out subsequently, and it's kind of hinted at there. But there is a Wally West in the New 52, but it's just not this Wally West.
Right. So like I didn't get that initially. No, the only Wally West I knew was from the CW show, basically. And I had one Flash comic with Wally West from when I was getting my radiator fixed one day, and the guy's like, "This is gonna be like 4 hours." I'm like, "What?" So I'm like, "All right, I'm gonna go walk around," and I found a comic book store, and I bought The Return of Barry Allen, which was like
I
a
love the return of Barry
yeah,
Allen.
it's like a '93, like 1993 Mark Waid, I think.
Yeah.
And it's actually pretty good. I went and reread it after I read this DC Rebirth just to say, hey, I think I was just kind of trying to bone up a little bit. And actually, like, yeah, I kind of remember liking this. That, yeah, that, I
No,
like the, I like. There's a. It's really funny, like how that book twists out too.
yeah, that's interesting that because that's when I'm thinking about Flash stories that I like. That's the one that pops in my head. I think because I read it when I was younger,
Hmm.
and I think I still have the trade paperback somewhere. But that's the one that always stuck with me. Like, oh, I like that.
Yeah,
So
it's good actually. I reread it. Yeah, it's a couple days ago, and yeah, it's actually pretty good. And I was like, okay, yeah, I can maybe get behind some more Flash stuff in the future here. if it's all
Yeah.
that good. But so, anyways, I'll kind of move along here. And so Wally West is like basically going around talking to Avengers or anyone that listened to him, saying, "Hey, I was in I was in reality. I'm no longer in reality. Something weird happened, and
Yeah.
I need help getting back."
Yeah.
Basically,
Bring
right?
me back to reality. Yeah. Oh.
It kind of reminded me of I don't know. It was like the problem I had with it, and I think this is probably kind of kind of your Infinite Crisis stuff, is like I didn't know any of these characters, right? Like who I
Yeah.
mean I knew Batman in the beginning, but like then he goes to like he goes to Asylum or something like that, and he's talking to this old man. I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is.
Yeah.
So
Um,
there was a lot of that, or these cameos and stuff of just people I didn't know. So it was kind of tough for me to get into.
yeah. I can't disagree with you there. I mean, it's I follow comics, and even I don't understand everything in there, which is a problem. So, but
All
yeah,
right.
it's you know what is a fun thing to say though is Wally West. It's a,
Oh, you're
when you just kept saying Wally West, I thought that was pretty fun.
yeah, you kind of turned into a robot for me for some reason. But anyways, the kind of comic goes on here, and while and he's kind of visiting all these people, and he eventually catches up to Barry Allen, who is a character in the New 52, but doesn't really remember Wally West at all because Wally West, or doesn't remember this Wally West because he's not part of the New 52. And they have this emotional moment where he finally does remember him for kind of some unexplained reason. And
True love.
yeah, I guess for this, I'm showing the splash page here, this embrace between the two of them, and,
Yeah.
and it
Love
kind of,
conquers all, man.
yeah, and so it brings them back. Um, so kind of like the big crux of it is at the end is probably like the big point of the story that is the interesting part. So throughout the comic, they're kind of hinting at this like unknown menace that has basically created the New 52. And it's kind of interesting how they did it because at points it's almost like they're talking about themselves as writers almost. It's kind of like what that was my impression when I first read it was like, they're talking about I don't know who this person was and they're outside of our reality, but
Yeah.
they're the ones that caused this. Like it seemed like it was like very self-referential. Did you get that at all or not?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it is very referential. And I guess I kind of had it figured out from that very first page because of the way the grid's laid out, and then it's talking about watches. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm thinking, in my heart of hearts, like, oh, this is what they're hinting at. I hope this is what they're actually doing. Uh, but they did it. So, and there's a few other things. There's a character named Pandora who
Right.
nobody cares about,
Yeah.
and uh, she was a character that they put in all like the New 52 titles because I think they were trying to look for like a back door in case it didn't work.
Hmm.
So she was like just wandering around in like all the titles, and then they never did anything with her because I think they thought, well, we're just going to stick with this New 52 and just go with it. So they
Yeah.
didn't have to use that back door. But there's a panel where she's in there and she's basically yelling at the character, um, and by that she's yelling at basically it's meta commentary on what's happened to comics since the series from the 1980s. And that whole page, I think, is almost like a panel for panel remake of the ending of Watchmen, which I guess I'm just going to have to say because
Yeah.
it's tough. So
Yeah,
So there's all these little shout outs to Watchmen and these little commentary I think about how like kind of Watchmen ruined the concept of superheroes uh, throughout the book. So
yeah, and I'm bringing that panel up now. Yeah, she says, skepticism, doubt, corruption, all things your cold heart believes in. And Pandora, from the mythology, is, there was hope left when she opened the box. And she kind of says that again as well. And then we see the next panel, her getting vaporized by Dr. Manhattan, and kind of the blue light.
yeah,
And
exactly like
that's
Will
kind of when
said.
I was like, that's kind of when I got it, was that panel there. I was like, I didn't really know what was going on up until then, but that just looked too familiar when you saw that part.
Yeah.
um, so now I remember when I was first introduced to Watchmen, by you, and I think must have been maybe a junior or senior in high school, and you just you gave me the trade to read one day, and I think before that you'd given me one other comic, which was The Dark Knight Returns. And so you kind of
Yeah.
started off with the heavy hitters.
Yeah.
And
And those
why
are
not?
the yeah. Well, I mean, there's three books that like when everyone talks about like how comics can be literary and stuff. There's always three books, and the three books are Art Spiegelman's Mouse about the Holocaust, um, Dark Knight Returns, and Watchmen. So, uh, so then I gave that to you, and you stole it.
Yeah, I did find it recently though. I'm going to give it back.
It's all right. I got another copy by now. I went around to somebody. I'm like, I don't read comics. Can you give me some comics to read? And they're like, here.
But yeah. So I I was familiar with Watchmen, and kind of the thing about Watchmen is it was always kind of a one-off story, and that was always kind of part of its appeal, I guess. It's because it was a self-contained story that
See, now I'm wondering though. I'm gonna go off on a tangent
hmm,
because I gave Watchmen for you to read, and I've got a copy of Watchmen that somebody actually did give me for me to read. It's actually from my cousin whose heart was in the right place. Where he's like, I know you like comics. Here's a comic you should read. And it was Watchmen,
hmm,
which of course I've read already. But hey, I needed a copy because
yeah.
some a-hole stole mine.
Hey, I think that's like
So
for your birthday. I gave you the Death of Superman one
yeah,
year.
that's right.
Kind of the same thing, right?
I
Like,
probably didn't even have the Death of Superman to be honest. But I'm wondering how many people end up getting Watchmen either as a gift or like just given to them by somebody that like, hey, you should read this comic.
and I guess some of our listeners probably might be familiar if they haven't read the comic that they might have saw the Zack Snyder movie, which is closest to the comic, I would say.
Yeah, it's like a good Cliff Notes.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's a good Cliff Notes, but it's like a Cliff Notes version of Watchmen.
yeah. Um, so we talked about this a little bit off there, like last week. Uh, so when they do the final panel and it's basically Dr. Manhattan on Mars and he's putting the watch back together and kind of repeating the dialogue from Watchmen about nothing ever ends, really. Um, at that point, I was when I was reading the comic, I was just kind of well, first of all, I was pretty baffled that they would go this route, and second of all, like it just felt like I don't know, like insincere or something. There was something very uh it was just wrong to me, and I'm not even a big comics fan, but like the thing about Watchmen for me was always it was this self-contained story. It wasn't um it's not part of the DC universe, and then all of a sudden it's the Watchmen are responsible for the DC universe at this point, which is I don't know.
Yeah, it's the emotion that I can use to best describe it is just it's sad to me. It's sad. Uh, I don't know. Did you read The Grace of Wrath in high school?
The Grapes of Wrath.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I didn't know because but like in the Grapes of Wrath, like Grapes of Wrath is one of my favorite books of all time, and the Grapes of Wrath has Tom Joad in it, who takes off and he gives a speech about how you'll see him in the eyes of people, and but basically he leaves the story at that point, right? And what I could think of was like, what if like John Steinbeck, the author of The Grapes of Wrath, was like in with there with his publisher, and the publisher's like, hey, you know what's really good? Like Zorro. Zorro is pretty awesome, right? Why don't we have Tom Joad come back and he'd be like Zorro and he'd like be a vigilante and he'd like fight people, And like John Steinbeck's like, no, that's kind of a dumb idea. That's not what my book's about. It's got a point. It's a novel. And they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, but Zorro's kind of cool, right? I mean, what if you were like Zorro? And he's like, no, man, it's good as it is. Well, I think we're just gonna make it like Zorro. And that's kind of what like this is to me. It's just it's or another analogy I guess would be like if a record company owned Michael Jackson's Thriller,
Hmm.
right? Or like Prince's Purple Rain. Prince is in the news lately. I don't know why. Something happened, but like, all right, Purple Rain. They reissued Purple Rain, and some guys like, hey, you know what would be good if like Chris Brown did a couple new songs, and we just put them in the middle, and we just sold that as Purple Rain. Like, like to me, it feels like you have this thing. It's this artistic vision. It's
Hmm.
been completed, and then you just let any old dudes just mess around with it.
So what
And
can you like fathom like what the motivation was? Like I mean, because they could have like had anyone, be responsible for the New 52. It could have literally been any character they could have wrote to do that. Like, well, what was the motivation to make it Watchmen? I mean, is this to sell? This can't be to sell stuff because I mean, it's like such a um. I mean, they like a lot of people just aren't really going to be like care about that, are they?
I think a lot of people are going to care about it because
Really?
I think, yeah, well, maybe because a few years ago they did Before Watchmen,
Hmm.
which was they did all these prequels, and it was kind of the same thing at that time. It was like, oh, this is sad,
Yeah.
because Alan Moore, the guy that wrote Watchmen, wants nothing to do with DC, doesn't want him to do this. They do it without him.
Hmm.
Uh, and the theory is we own these characters, so we're going to do what we want with them, and we're going to create this new intellectual property which we can then exploit through, hoping that they're going to come up with a new story for Watchmen that'll sell just as well. Uh, but I think it's doomed to failure because it's just it's watering it down. So you had this perfect thing, and you're just like watering it down.
Hmm.
And I think comic fans like that. I mean, after this happened, you kind of search the web and you kind of look for like-minded individuals so you can go down your own crazy lane.
Yeah.
But you find a lot of people that aren't like-minded, and I'm always intrigued by that. And I just think we've got this culture now that's like, hey, I like this, I just want more of it. I want
Okay.
more and more and more and more and more and more, and nobody's satisfied uh, with what they're getting. There's all this like people whining and complaining about the new Ghostbusters, which looks absolutely terrible.
Hmm.
But that was created by this culture of people that are like, "Hey, we want more Ghostbusters. We want more Ghostbusters. Give us more Ghostbusters." It's
Right.
like you created this monster. You deal with
You
it.
got your
And I
Ghostbusters.
think that exists in this too. It's like we want more Watchmen. We don't care if it's written by, you know, people other than Alan Moore, has nothing to do with it. We just want to see Doctor Manhattan fight Batman.
Yeah, so that's kind of the interesting thing is like where like it's not really clear where they go from this because they haven't announced a new Watchmen book, and there's this is this going to be Watchmen popping up in all their stories like here and there, or only Doctor Manhattan?
You
We had
know,
someone burying the comedian's button in Batman's cave.
Yeah,
What,
yeah. Like, why would you put it there?
why would you bury it in the rock? I don't know.
Yeah, like out of all the places to put that,
Set it
why
on
would
his
you put?
keyboard or something, right?
Yeah, yeah. Or like if you don't want him to figure it out, put it at the bottom of the ocean. And I
Yeah,
don't know how he's going to figure it out anyway because it's like something that exists in some alternate reality. But
yeah. Do you think this is leading them like a new Watchmen comic?
I would hope not. I don't put anything past them. I think it's going to lead to this story, and I hope they just leave it buried at the story. Uh, but I think the point of the story is going to be Watchmen is a dark and cold book,
Hmm.
and they're going to say you made all these heroes because the complaint about the New 52 is that it's dark and it's like
It's
the
not
heroes
hopeful,
are
right?
pessimistic.
Yeah, there's no
They're
hope really. It's yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that has more to do with the '90s influence, I think, than Watchmen, because like the '90s was like the image stuff, like Spawn
Hmm.
and Rob Liefeld stuff, and that's where I think that influence comes from, where it's just like we want blood, guts, boobs, and so on, more than Watchmen. Watchmen's like a literary work that just deconstructs superheroes. Uh, But that's going to be the point of the story is like them fighting back to reclaim optimism from the pessimism of Watchmen.
Right.
That's where I think it's going to go.
And it was
So,
kind of I mean, Watchmen ends on almost a hopeful note, right? With the journal kind of sitting there in
the
the
journal that's going to lead to the apocalypse?
yeah.
I
Yeah, so maybe not. Uh,
don't know. He could have rewritten for the
yeah.
apocalypse.
So yeah, DC Rebirth. It was a confusing book if you're not into comics or not into the New 52, I guess. Um, uh, I thought it was cool. It was 2.99 for like 80 pages of comics. I thought that was cool. Nice of
Yeah,
them to do.
it was a decent. I mean, you got a lot for your money as far
Hmm.
as you know. I wasn't a big fan of Gary Frank's art. I think it's very static, but I know a lot of people are. And you did get a lot for your money as far as there was a lot of content in
Sure.
it. But
I'm gonna bring up the DC previews, and so with this relaunch, a lot of the DC books are going twice monthly, and they're going to 2.99, and they're all kind of getting this new status quo. Some of them are um, we're getting kind of a new Superman. We're getting um, a Wonder Woman that's like a half origin story of 1 week, and the other it's kind of a modern day. So there's some cool stuff they kind of want to do. I'm just going to go through these real quick and kind of talk about maybe some of the creative teams and like if any of those people give you like hope for any of these books, because you'll know them more than me, I guess. And if you don't,
yeah,
that's fine too. We'll start out with the big ones. We got the Superman, the Rebirth story, and Superman #1. The writer is a guy, Peter J. Tomasi.
yeah, I don't haven't read a whole lot of his stuff, but uh, I'd be lying if I because that was the one tough part about Rebirth that really made no sense to me at all. Is like Superman's dead,
Hmm.
um, and it did say in there like read Superman such and such before you read this story, and I
Yeah.
didn't, so it's my fault.
So yeah, I think what's happening is the new 52 Superman is dead,
Yeah,
and then
but
the pre new
there's like
50
a
yeah the pre new 52 Superman um who was kind of pulled into the story with like last year's event Convergence. He was kind of pulled into this universe. He's gonna take up the mantle of Superman once again, and he's just been kind of laying low, I think, this
doesn't he
past
have a
year.
kid?
Yeah, so yeah, that's the big thing is he's kind of balancing being a dad with uh with being Superman. and his kid's like
Like,
a
dude,
half Superman.
remember that Superman movie that came out, that Bryan Singer Superman
Yeah,
movie? Like everyone just hated that kid because it was the worst idea ever.
right. And you
And
kind of
then,
you paint yourself into this corner of always having a kid around. Um,
well, and you also paint yourself into a corner of now your Superman is a Superman from like another universe. Like
yeah, it's
like
really
to me,
confused. I'm very confused by that part of it because like this whole part of the New 52 Rebirth was talking about how their time was stolen. 10 years of their life, and when the New 52 started, these a lot of these heroes acted younger and they didn't know each other yet, and that was kind of part of the reboot, right? But like in this situation, they're acting like some of those characters are the old characters still, but like not all of them. Like this Superman's a different one. It's I don't know. It's tough. It's the comics continuity, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't know
But I
exactly
mean
what they're gonna
that
do there.
that part of it, like that's what this whole thing. You say you're creating this new event to bring in new readers and to like restart things, and your Superman, the most famous superhero that you have, is some dude from some other universe with a backstory that I don't even understand, as opposed to like Superman, whose backstory is easy. His planet blows up. His dad sends him to Earth. He has superpowers. He
Sure.
does good. Like that's the story that it should be, and that to me is why this is why I have no interest in that Superman book. And I love Superman. You know I love
Yeah.
Superman. Uh, I have no interest in that book because I don't care about that character. My Superman's the dude that comes from Krypton and he, you know,
Yeah.
acts like Superman.
Right.
So
And then we have Action Comics. This is going to star like Lex Luthor in the Superman suit. The writer is Dan Jurgens, and art is
yeah, Dan.
Patrick Searcher.
Yeah, Dan Jurgens used to write the old Superman. He like was one of the people that wrote the old Death of Superman back in the 1990s.
Okay.
So, so I guess he's back now. So,
Um, yeah, the Action Comics actually really like both of those covers. They're fun. It's just
yeah,
fun seeing the super suit. The Batman, I guess, is going to be the closest to the New 52 from what they're saying is like basically just a continuation of that story. The writer though is Tom King and Scott Snyder,
yeah,
and were they the ones doing? Was Snyder the one doing the Batman books before this?
yes, yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And I think Tom King had just started on them as well, like
okay,
right
yeah.
before.
It looks like he's just helping with the one shot, and then Batman #1 is it's just credited to Tom King, and
Yeah,
then #2, number Detective, Detective Comics. We have a someone named James James Tyron the Fourth. Tynan the
yeah,
Fourth.
yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking. I don't know how you say it, but I know
Yeah.
who it is. I don't really have much to say about him though. I will say like Scott Snyder's stuff. It was okay. I know a
Hmm.
lot of people really liked it. I thought the art was really good. It was Greg Polo who used to do like Spawn back in the '90s, who like developed this new style for Batman, which I thought was pretty cool. Um, there's a lot of it that goes too far for me. Like just is like they had at one point like they have this thing in comics now where they keep just replacing like their superheroes with other people. So like Captain America's like the Falcon and uh, Spider Man was Doctor Octopus for a while and now in that comic it was Commissioner Gordon had become Batman and he had like a Iron Man suit and stuff and I'm like I don't care about that just give me
Right.
Batman. But I mean, I did pick up the first issue of Batman Rebirth because I just like I'll give this a shot, uh, and it was pretty similar to what it was before. I don't see the difference
Hmm.
really.
Then we have like we'll just go quickly. There's some Aquaman, and we got Flash coming out this week. Um, you got to think the Flash story will be interesting. with Wally West being around again, I guess.
You are optimistic.
Lightning strikes twice. A new storm brews over Central City and disproves the old adage about lightning never will, you know. Just as Barry begins to feel overwhelmed fighting crime, a new speedster debuts. This is the one I picked up, Green Lanterns Rebirth #1, because I was like looking at all these, and I was like, well, I probably know what I'm gonna get with Batman. I know what I'm gonna get with Superman, probably. Like maybe there'll be something weird, so I went for the Green Lanterns. And not much happened. It just set up these two new Green Lanterns, I guess, and I guess some of them they had been around for a while, but they were considered rookie Green Lanterns, and so it was a duel. It's a woman and a guy, and they're basically going to be co-Green Lanterns protecting Earth. That's
Yeah.
kind of where that left that off. There was Hal Jordan in one splash page though for that. It got me thinking though, like I really like, and we'll have to talk about this some other week, but like when I saw that stuff, it made me appreciate the Frank Miller Green Lanterns who like look like Gumby.
Yeah.
I really like those guys.
Yeah. I don't know about any of those books to be honest. Like, and I'm just not one like crossovers.
Yeah,
Like one of the most freeing things I think as a comics fan is when you finally realize you don't have to care about the crossovers. You can just read what you want,
right.
you know. And like there's this comic now. It's called Black Canary, right?
Hmm.
And Black Canary was always she's a character like from the 1940s, and she's like this vigilante, and she's you know just somebody that fights crime, an alter ego, same story as everyone. Well, like about a year ago, like guys were like, "Hey, we're gonna make a new Black Canary series with that character, but now she's gonna be the lead singer of a band." So she's like the lead singer of a band, right? And she
Hmm.
goes around and has like adventures, and it's kind of like like not like Josie and the Pussycats, but she's got like a band around her the entire time, and they're driving from town to town in a van, and they're having like these adventures, right?
Right.
She didn't need to have some like big explanation on why she's now a singer. They just did it,
It was the
And
Flash,
I was
man.
like, yeah, that's what it's like. Just do it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And like Batgirl, like when Batgirl started the New 52, she had like this really dark, depressing Tower series, and they were like, "Oh no, man, we're gonna switch that. And now she's gonna be like a college student. She's gonna be like kind of happy-go-lucky and live." And they just did it.
Yeah.
I think you can just do this stuff without like this hoopla,
Yeah.
and I don't think people care that much.
Right. They just
Some
actually
people
want
do.
to. Yeah. They just want to see actually a good story. So they're not really they're not going to be tied to the past if you're outputting like your new stuff is pretty good.
Yeah, and I will say that in saying that I don't. Those comics probably aren't selling that well, but I enjoy them, and that's all that really matters.
I mean, something
Like,
that
who
did so
cares
well
about
out of the
both
New
movies?
52 was the Harley Quinn stuff. She was kind of became like the Deadpool for DC,
Yeah,
and that got super popular. And I always see that stuff in like the top 10, like for the month or
yeah.
something like that.
I mean, the New 52 really didn't shake things up. Yeah, I mean, Harley Quinn's huge now, but I mean, it's pretty much, Batman's the most important. And Batman's always interesting because Batman, like, they always do these events to, like, fix these people and fix the continuity or whatever. But they never do anything with Batman because they're so afraid of people, like, jumping off of Batman or. So now, like, he's had, like, 45 Robins. And like there's like all these people that like, and I'm just like for Batman especially, he works good when he's alone, and maybe you have one Robin,
Yeah.
or at most like two Robins, like one that grew up like Nightwing or whatever. But now he's got like a kid, and he's got these three other Robins
Yeah. There's
that used
actually
to
a
be Robins.
series called We Are Robin.
yeah. That's yeah. And it's just like he's the one out of anybody that they should just be like pare down and be like, hey, let's take this character back to basics, like, but they don't. And so his stuff is just as complicated as it ever was,
hmm
you know.
Yeah, including we even got a little more complicated in Rebirth when they reveal that there's actually three Jokers, not one. So
Yeah, I
there's
have no idea what's going
one
on
for
with
each
that.
Robin or something.
Yeah, I have no clue what that means.
It means that every Robin was actually Joker too.
Yeah, it's just it's like I don't know,
They come
because
in pairs,
Batman.
man.
I mean, Batman is when you're talking about characters, Batman by far is the most popular comics character in
hmm
the world. Like, nothing's even close to it. It's just like you can't pick up a Batman comic and be like, "Oh, I know this makes total sense." Like if you go watch the Christian Bale movies or you go watch Batman versus Superman, and you were
Yeah.
like, "Oh man, I want to read some Batman comics." You go and you pick up a comic and there's like 45 Robins and like Alfred is like you know I don't know what he's doing, but Commissioner Gordon's riding around in an Iron Man suit, and you're like, what the hell is this crap? Like, why can't they pare that stuff down to what makes that character so powerful through the generations? I don't
Yeah.
know.
It actually leaves me a nice segue for the kind of the last Rebirth title I wanted to talk about today. And that was the Wonder Woman Rebirth. And I think that comes out this week, June 8th. Is that this week? Yeah, June 8th.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
tomorrow or 2 days from now.
Yeah. This is written by Greg Rucka, art by Paulo Sequeira and Liam Sharp.
Well,
And it's kind of interesting what they're doing with they're doing the twice monthly with this title too. And they're splitting it up like 1 week, like 1 week is going to be kind of an origin, like they're doing the origin story for Wonder Woman yet again, and then they're doing some kind of modern day story that's just like current with the New 52 basically, um,
well,
or current with Rebirth, I guess. And I don't, the art on this one looked awesome. I thought this Liam Sharp.
yeah.
And
I
I think
haven't
I'll
seen
pick it
much
up.
of this.
I think I'll pick it up alone on just the art because it looks really really cool. And
Yeah,
then
and also Greg Rucka he's a pretty good writer.
mhm.
Uh, he's writing a book called Lazarus, which is pretty good, and he's written some good superhero runs too. He has this weird problem where he like always like goes too far. Like he always just like it's really really good up to like a point, and then he like jumps off a cliff.
Uh-huh.
That's like because he's a novelist too, and I've read a few of his novels, and it's kind of the same thing. It's like he writes these characters, and you're like really with them, and they're very similar in tone usually. Uh, and then all of a sudden, something like super weird happens. Like one of them become a robot. And you're like, I don't want to read this.
Right.
Why is he a robot all of a sudden? But like he does that a lot. But I mean, he's interesting enough, and he used to write Wonder Woman, I think, until he got like fired from it for some reason.
Yeah, I
So
think that's right. I was looking at his Twitter earlier, and he's talking about how it's good to be back and stuff like that. So
yeah,
yeah, I think I will check that out. Green Lanterns, I think I probably won't continue. Just I don't know. It was just kind of two random people I didn't know saying we're Green Lanterns now. So I'm probably selling it short, but
I don't know. I think you're selling it perfectly. I think that's probably perfect.
there was
Yeah,
another cool book that was called Wacky Raceland #1.
yeah. It comes out this week, I think, right?
Yeah, I don't know. That looks
And
like it
they,
has some potential to it. It's kind of like a Mad Max looking thing.
yeah, with all the characters from the wacky races back in the 1960s.
Yeah,
They came out with this thing, like they have zombies, Scooby Doo or whatever.
yeah, Scooby Apocalypse.
Yeah.
Uh,
Uh,
Hey, I
yeah.
actually read the trade for the for Afterlife of Archie.
Oh yeah.
It's actually
How
pretty
was
damn
that?
good, dude. It's
Yeah.
like
I
I
heard
like
art.
feel like
I
a
read
horror.
Archie versus Predator. It wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be.
The Afterlife of
But
Archie is pretty darn good, man. Like, I'll let you borrow it. It's like for like a horror comic, I was like, yeah, it's good. It like has some good beats in it. So
yeah, I like that artist a lot. I don't know if he does the. I know he does the covers, but
yeah, I think it must be the same guy. Like the and the palette they use is awesome. It's like lots of like deep blues and then like kind of a burnt orange and like a lot of
yeah,
their stuff. And it looks cool together. So, but anyways,
yeah.
so yeah, that's pretty much where we're at with Rebirth. Anything else you want to say about it?
No, not really. I mean, I didn't expect to like it,
Yeah,
so and I didn't. Uh, I
right.
just, I feel sad that you know if nothing else, like if you don't have respect for Alan Moore and what he's done, that's one thing. But DC Comics like had something they could always say, listen, what we do is important. Here's this work of art, right? And to see them throw that away is just it's sad. Like Frank Miller, he's allowed to throw away the Dark Knight Returns because he wrote it. So if
Hmm.
he wants to write sequels to that, by all means. Uh, but I just think it's just like if somebody gives you this piece of art, take care of it. And the fact that they're not taking care of it is a
It,
sad
it's sad.
commentary. So I'm a bummer tonight, man. We should talk about something more fun.
Yeah, we'll have to pick it up to like something we like next week.
Yeah, we need to watch a funny movie or something. Uh,
Yeah, I don't have much else to say about it either. I just kind of picked it up just to, I don't know, say I read it, stay current. It was actually kind of a pain in the ass because it did sell well. It sold out basically everywhere. There's a second printing coming out, I think, this week. Although they've doubled the price, it was $2.99. This week it's going to be $5.99,
yeah, they're
which
pushers,
I
man.
thought that was
They're
kind of interesting. I was like, geez. It was really funny because uh, I was in the car and Callie was being nice and she's like, I'll run into the store and see if they have it. And so she went in there, and like uh, the guy's talking. Yeah, he's like, we just ran out and it's gonna be back in a few weeks, but it's gonna be $5.99. She's like, it's gonna be double the price, and he's like, well, it's 80 pages. And she's like, yeah, but it was $2.99, and all for no reason it's $5.99 now.
You get people hooked on that sweet Watchmen, man. It's just
Yeah,
like heroin.
I mean that's definitely the biggest question from the whole thing, and like where I don't think there's a great way to like ever salvage it, but like it'll just be. I'm just intrigued like where they'll go with it because they didn't announce these guys as their own series or like Rebirth as like a continuing series on its own. Like it's these if they want to keep with this story, like are we going to have Watchmen popping up like in these stories, and that'd just be strange to me.
Yeah,
So
I don't know, man. I think they're gonna scavenge that skeleton until there's no flesh left on it.
okay,
Which I mean, that's sad because you got this dude, right, who's supposed to be a really good writer, and it's like, why aren't you creating your own Watchmen? Why aren't you doing that?
right.
Instead of doing this, and it's just
I mean, it's such a good story that we had like a big budget movie made that had no stars in it. No, there was like no um, you know the no big name comic stars in it. It's all original characters.
but now
And
they can push
somehow
that man.
somehow they got a movie made. Like that's how good the story was, and they didn't do a great job, but they did okay, I would think. And
Yeah.
like so it's just the thing baffled me, and I was just like, what when I read it. So
Yeah, but it's like and another thing about like a rebirth, right? Is they keep telling us they're gonna bring the optimism back. Like this is like the third or fourth time they've done like this exact story where it's like, oh man, we're gonna be all optimistic. But really, I mean, you're gonna go with what sells.
yeah,
And like what sells is going to be a dark Batman. It's not going to be a Batman. It's like, oh, like Adam West,
Hmm.
and and the comic movies are dark right now, and or the DC ones at least, and you're going to go with what sells. So quit selling me the snake oil about how you're like bringing back this heroic age of optimism. And there was like, and the other thing that bothers me is there's this comic writer called Grant Morrison, right? And he's written like 2 or 3 series like crossovers that say this exact same thing, which is like Watchmen killed like the heroic ideal of superheroes, right?
Hmm.
But he used these things called like metaphors. like he went deep into like this writer's bag of tricks, and he's like, I'm not gonna really like use the Watchmen because that's such a creatively bankrupt thing to do. I'm gonna like use these other characters, and you, the smart intellectual person reading this comic, will
Hmm.
be able to see that this
He's
means
talking
the
about the
Watchmen.
Watchmen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, but I don't think the people that are writing this got that. So,
Yeah, and it seems like kind of a so heavy-handed to say that anyways, like, that was the one moment. I mean, is there a truth to that? I don't know. Or is it just a product of, how times have changed in general? So,
yeah, I don't think it had it has to, I mean, it has some things in the fact that Watchmen was the first thing to really deconstruct and like make these characters look crazy. But I'd say the thing that made people more inclined to just like badass superheroes was Frank Miller's work.
hmm.
Um, like The Dark Knight Returns, he's crazy, but he's also a super cool badass.
Yeah.
And in his Daredevil stuff, like stuff happens. People get murdered. People go crazy. People get their lives ruined. You know, and then you had a bunch of people in the 1990s that used that as a template, but they didn't know anything except they didn't include all the literary stuff. They just included like, oh man, isn't it cool? This dude just like murders
People murdering
people.
people, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that's the reason why the new 52 is like that, is because the people that did those comics are the people doing the
Mm,
new 52 comics. like that's where the linkage is. It's not
sure.
like these people are like, we want to make the new Watchmen. They're like, we want to make these old comics like we did in the 1990s,
Hmm.
which are full of characters like Bloodpool and like Murder Face.
Death's, yeah, death, what's the one I got? Because I picked up a bag of, like, free comic book day.
Yeah,
She was selling, like, her 10 comics for $2 or whatever, and like she puts all these funny little quips on them. And then one was
yeah,
like image today, and like the one was like image yesterday. I was like, I'll pick up image yesterday, and it like you don't know what you're gonna get. And it
yeah,
was all these like basically those comics. And I was like, I
yeah.
don't want to look at it. I kind of thumbed through them, and like I think I probably just threw them away.
I tell you, man, I love garbage culture, and this is gonna be like I'm gonna start writing for the site again because I got to do something to support this podcast.
Hmm.
So I'm or this show. Yeah, this show. So like, but that to me is more fun than any of these events. Is just go to like half price books or go to like free comic book day. They were doing the same thing here. They were just giving away these like huge packs of comics, like, and like all that stuff is just so terrible, but awesome in a way.
Yeah.
Because at least that stuff is just like uh, not just intellectual property to get me to support this brand, but like some just like crazy person writing about, like the one I just read was this comic, and it was Rob Liefeld did the story, quote unquote, but it's about this priest, right, who like was a Gulf War vet, and he has Gulf War syndrome. This was back before the sequel to the Gulf War, the first Gulf War,
Hmm.
and he's just like murdering people, like criminals,
Hmm.
right? In his alter ego, And you read that today and you're like, holy crap, because like every person that he murders in that comic is like a minority. And you're like, what in the heck is going on? You just read this and you're just like taken aback. But it's like a product of its time that can't exist in today's world because nobody would accept that.
Hmm.
And it's absolutely terrible. The art's terrible, the story's terrible. It's racist in ways you can't even like not intentionally racist, but clearly racist. And but you look at it and you're like this is something that exists, and I have read it now.
Yeah.
Like it's cataloged in my brain.
Yeah, you've talked about that, and you like to be more of a curator of that stuff. So yeah, I think that'd be a
Yeah,
good outlet for the site, actually.
yeah. I love terrible stuff because and sometimes it's great, like you read 15 things and
Hmm.
one of them is something and you read that and you're like, man, that was awesome, and I might be one of the only 25 to 30 people in the world that that
That remember it.
have seen this and
Yeah.
remember it and
Hmm.
think it's worth saving. And then the majority of it you can throw away, and then every once in a while you get something that's so misguided, and you can say like, "Oh man, I'm a I'm a better human being for having read that and knowing why it's terrible." you know?
All right. Well, I think that's about does it for episode 2 of the Gamer Breakfast Show. We ran about an hour, so that's probably where I'm going to shoot for.
Yeah,
Next week we're going to be live.
we're gonna
Uh,
be live. What are we
yeah,
gonna be doing live
we're going to be live on Twitch.tv. And
on
so,
Twitch?
yeah, if you
Oh,
guys want to come interact with us, you can be there. We'll have the chat open, and you can we'll do some live interaction.
yeah, we'll live. We'll interact. I'm not promising anything. I
But
don't.
we're
I
gonna go
don't. I
for it.
don't know who would be listening to this.
Well, we're gonna have viewers, man. Trust me. There's
All right.
just like you're the curator of bad uh, comics from throughout history. There's people that just troll the nether realms of Twitch looking for horrible podcasts that are live, and they jump in those people's chat and usually just troll them. But maybe we'll
Oh
get
man,
someone that's
that'd be
interested.
fun. We'll start this, man. Come and troll us.
But
Yeah.
yeah, thanks for listening. And I got one more question for you, Jordan, and then we'll be done. So straight up in a fight, and they both have time to prepare. Ozymandias versus Batman. Who's gonna win?
Who? Oh man, I always go with I guess Batman.
Okay. Yeah, both the smartest men in the world, the best tacticians, both
Yeah,
at
it's like
both at their physical peak. But you're going with
yeah,
Batman.
it's like I always say, like who would win in a fight, Huckleberry Finn or Batman?
Yeah, Batman always. All right.
All
Well, we'll
right,
catch you
man.
next time. Thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, follow the Twitter, send us mail, and look for us live next week.
Send me cola. I'm
Yeah,
out of
send us
cola.
cool. Oh yeah, I was drinking a 1983 by the Pepsi Cola Original Cola
That's
Foundation.
good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's
But
not bad.
I've been drinking Mr. Cola from 1949. I don't think it's actually been bottled since 1949.
Yeah.
I think it's just the formula. Mr. is in quotation marks, so I think it might be. It's celebrating 50 years. Mr. Cola is affectionately known as the aristocrat of colas.
We got to do this at the beginning next time.
Yeah, no one's gonna hear this part. So, all right.